Dearborn team. Last fall, our team was hit hard with loss. I remember feeling this need to pick up this team, to pick up its broken pieces and put them back together somehow. When Brad sent out an email about a grief conference, I wanted to go and offer to present what I learned. I had you in mind as I attended, and it was insightful. It left me searching deeper. I had put thought into what I could present, and there existed this pressure to provide the answer to help everyone heal and recover. Then I realized there is no answer. I had been wanting and hoping to fix us, but we don't need to be fixed. We just need to grieve. So with the help of others, I made this video. Sorry I didn't get all your faces. This video is a brief perspective on grief.
Normal. Everyone processes grief differently. The person can go through the same thing as somebody else, but they grieve completely differently. So you have to be sensitive to each person's needs.
Well, grief is really different if you're grieving for someone with compassion and sympathy, or whether you're grieving from your own loss.
Grateful.
My life right now.
Not only the personal journey of the patient or the nurse involved, just that entire transition of mind, body, of emotion, of getting back to normal, whatever normal now means, and oftentimes that journey is a roller coaster ride, because our patients and us as staff have ups and down days, and then often that journey is even better than, ends even better than we ever could have imagined. I have to believe that, because we see so much sadness on our unit, and we see so much sadness in the world, that I have to believe the journey is worth it.
Crying.
Paired coping that gets in the way of your daily lifestyle. Oh, Brianne!
It's a natural process.
Sadness.
Heavy.
Sad. However, I feel like in the times where I've had a lot of grief in my life, that pretty amazing things can come from it.
Loss. Family.
It happens.
I think grief is something that each individual goes through. I think we all kind of go through it in different ways, but I think it really allows somebody to kind of feel emotion and kind of, if they're able to process it, it makes them a healthier individual and are able to kind of grow with that process.
I think that a lot of our patients experience grief. I think there are a lot of different types of grief.
I think of grief from the perspective of patients and their families, and coming into the burn ICU and knowing that life is not the same as what it used to be prior to them coming here.
You will lose someone you can't live without, and your heart will be badly broken. And the bad news is that you never completely get over the loss of your beloved. But this is also the good news. They live forever in your broken heart that doesn't seal back up, and you come through. It's like having a broken leg that never heals perfectly, that still hurts when the weather gets cold, but you learn to dance with the limp.
Yep.
Aww.
Brianne asked me to talk a little bit about grief and loss and how it's affected me this past year and how I've learned to cope with it. I think that no matter how close we live with issues of mortality at work, death is surprising and shocking when it happens in your own personal life. 2015 was a year I experienced loss on a very profound level. Most of you know I lost 2 friends in an unexpected plane crash last April, and 2 weeks later lost my father-in-law, Nils' dad. I learned pretty quickly that grief has a ripple effect because you're trying to cope with your own sense of loss and sadness, but we're all human and we absorb the loss and sadness and sorrow and grief of those people around us. So we grieve as a community, but it has a ripple effect. And I found that I was absorbing the sorrow of my husband over the loss of his dad, and I was absorbing the sorrow of my two friends who had just lost their spouses unexpectedly. So grief on grief on grief. It was really tough. But here we are, and we keep going, we keep working, we keep living, and we keep loving.
I think that one way to sort of process what you see and feel and hear at work every day is you can go home and talk in generalities. I had a really hard patient today. It broke my heart. You know, the minutia, the details about why they broke your heart aren't necessarily as important as just your heart is broken. You feel for this person. Or I had to take care of a really small child today, and that was so hard for me because it's close in age to our baby. And that scared me, and it made me worried, and it made me think, what would we do if we were in the same situation? And so, again, we don't ever want with our family members to share specific patient details that would help identify who that person is. But to be able to kind of get more to the root of how are we feeling is really what we're trying to say anyway. And so that minutia, the details, are really less important than how are we feeling.
Ultimately, I think being on the unit, I have experienced things that I didn't think I ever would or that I could for people and care about people in a different way. I found a part of myself that became very compassionate and empathetic to these patients, and I think that it really stems from the fact that we see these patients from admission to discharge, and we become a part of their lives and see their families and experience everything about them, that it becomes very hard not to feel some sort of emotional connection to them, especially when it comes time to them passing. So I try to keep that in mind, but also try to keep a connection or a disconnection so that I don't let it affect me very much, but I have a hard time with that. I find myself to be a very passionate person, as my husband likes to call it, but I think that's also a part of me that makes me the nurse that I am, and that's something that I hope not to lose throughout my years as a nurse.
One of the key things that I think it's important for all of us to understand is that while we can't go toting around everyone's grief for all of the bad things that happen on our watch with us all the time, there's also a balancing act that's there in terms of making sure that we still feel things. It's normal to feel things. It's normal to hurt. It is normal to feel compassion for our families and our patients. And I've honestly been known to say more than once that if you ever find that you don't have that compassion, if you lose your give a damn, then it's probably time to go do something else, either for a time or maybe permanently, because some people can't recover that, and that's okay. The flip side of breaking down and not feeling any of that at all and just completely numbing yourself out is the idea of feeling everything so deeply that it all hurts, and you feel a lot like one of our patients who's missing their skin because everything is just painful. It's exquisitely painful. And that's not a healthy place to be in either. One of the things that's really important to remember is that we are all caregivers, and particularly those of you who have chosen a career in nursing. You are caregivers in a way that, as a physician, I don't completely understand. I chose a different line of work. But you are caregivers. You are at the bedsides and in the rooms with the families. And even though we may get to know them fairly well, you all get to know them far more intimately than we do. And that creates a different relationship for you. The reason that I highlight it, though, as being a caregiver relationship is the simple fact that as a caregiver, it is so important that you take care of yourself.
Something I read probably 4 or 5 years ago really highlights this, and it always makes me giggle when I'm getting on a plane. And they're doing the safety briefing, and they remind you that you should always put your own oxygen mask on first. That's true on airplanes, and it's true in day-to-day life. And sometimes that means that you have to figure out a way to get into your busy schedule and your busy lives that you manage with your job and your family and whatever your other things are that we all have. Those things that you know nourish your soul and help put you back together when you feel like you're falling apart. Those of you who know me know that running and yoga are really big priority things for me in terms of physical energy and just managing that and getting some of those things out. I do a lot of writing too. Some of you guys see my blog, and then I do all my professional writing, and I have a book full of things I write that are just things I write as a way of processing information. So there are a lot of different ways out there, and one of the best things that you can do if you haven't really sat down and thought about this before is, what are your own requirements for self-care? What do you need to do for you to keep you whole? You know, another one of mine I'll throw out there are my walks with Olivia that you guys know I go on a lot. And that's less of managing my physical energy, and it's as much managing emotions and complex things and just being out there moving with this animal who demands nothing of me besides a walk, and is really both healing, and it helps me frame a lot of thoughts. I am amazed at the amount of cognitive processing that I get done when she and I are out together. So I think my message for you has a few parts to it. Number one, it is okay to have feelings. Please keep having feelings. Feelings are good and they're important. And particularly if you're a caregiver, you cannot be a compassionate caregiver without having your feelings. But what you have to remember when we have tragedies that we deal with, and we deal with full-on tragedies, as y'all know, is it's not your tragedy and it's not my tragedy. And even though it breaks my heart, I don't get to take it home. I don't get to own it. It's not mine. I'm a witness to it. I can stand there and hold witness to what's happening with families and with patients, but at the end of the day, it's not my tragedy. And I have to kind of find a little box that I put it in, and I put it up on a shelf. And so it's there. It's not that it completely goes away, but it's also not something that's immediately there all the time, because I have responsibilities to keep taking care of other people, and I can't give that up. And I have a responsibility to take care of me, just as each of you has a responsibility to take care of other people and take care of you. So put on your own oxygen mask first, figure out what heals your soul, and spend your time doing that when you're not here in the trenches working really hard with all of us. And keep being compassionate and wonderful and kind to our patients and their families, and more importantly to each other and to yourselves. That's the hardest task.
You're turning it on. You turn it off right now.
Don't put me on the spot like this.
On the spot. It's recording. It's recording! Check out our Heine.
It's like running away.
I taught you what?
When you think of that grief.
I look more scared. This is Shannon's grief face.